On the seventh day of the world, in a newly formed garden surrounded by the silent borders of Eden, God stops working. Genesis chapter 2 paints a portrait of total stillness. The dirt is settled, the rivers are flowing, and the Creator rests. But read the canonical text closely, and a jarring absence emerges from that ancient silence. The heavens are vast, yet in the traditional account of the very first Sabbath, the millions of heavenly beings are completely unaccounted for. Adam is not told to rest. Eve is given no command to keep the day holy. The patriarchs of Genesis pitch their tents and dig their wells, but no human stops on the seventh day. Listen to the King James Version in Genesis 2, verses 1 through 3. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And God blessed the seventh day, and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made. Stop right there. Look at the Hebrew word for host in verse 1. Tsaba. It means a mass of persons, an army, an organized assembly. Yet Genesis gives us no movement, no song, no action from this army on day 7. Picture it, a finished universe, a solitary God, and absolute quiet. Why does an ancient, preserved tradition insist that the Sabbath was not originally a commandment given to humanity for physical rest, but rather an elite, ongoing liturgy kept exclusively by the highest-ranking angels in the throne room of God before mankind even existed? There is a text that shatters this solitary void. The Book of Jubilees, an ancient Jewish writing preserved in its entirety within the Ethiopian Orthodox canon, historically referred to by the early church as the Little Genesis. Open Jubilees chapter 2, and the seventh day is no longer a quiet afternoon in the dirt of Eden. It is a cosmic coronation. Jubilees tears the veil off this quiet void. It declares that God did not rest alone. Instead, he commanded a rhythmic, burning worship, kept by a very specific, terrifying subset of his creation. Two orders, the angels of the presence and the angels of sanctification. I hold this as their telling, not as a proven fact, but this ancient framework answers a profound silence in our biblical text. God sanctifies a day, yet for thousands of canonical years, the Sabbath appears dormant on earth. Nobody is keeping it. Sit with that. God blesses the seventh day, but gives it to no human until Moses stands at Sinai. Who, then, was keeping the Sabbath for those thousands of years? According to Jubilees, it was the two orders, beings of pure fire and unceasing voice. They were the only ones permitted to enter into this seventh-day pause, the highest ranks of the divine council, locked in a heavy, unending synchronization with the Creator. See the scene. God steps back from the physical dirt, but the heavenly throne room is vibrating with an exclusive liturgy. The first Sabbath was not given to men of dust. It was given to spirits of fire. But to understand why these specific angels were chosen to keep the rhythm of God, we have to look at when they were made. Because according to this ancient Ethiopian text, these two orders weren't created on day 4 with the stars. They weren't formed on day 6 with the beasts. They were born in a terrifying flash of light before the physical world even had a shape. The canonical text leaves the seventh day quiet, but the ancient tradition leaves it burning with angelic liturgy. Yet the strangest detail hidden in Jubilees is not that these angels kept the Sabbath, but the exact moment they first opened their eyes. What really happened on the first day of creation before God ever spoke the word light? Genesis 1, verses 1 and 2. In the beginning God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Stop right there. The traditional reading sees an empty, wet, dark, a silent void waiting for a spark. We assume God is completely alone here, hovering over the deep before the first sunrise. But the ancient text of Jubilees shatters this empty room. It declares that the void was not empty at all. Before God ever spoke the command for light, the darkness was already violently alive. According to Jubilees chapter 2, the very first act of creation on day 1 was the heavenly host. For on the first day he created the heavens which are above, and the earth and the waters, and all the spirits which serve before him. Picture it. No stars, no sun, just the crushing blackness of the deep, and suddenly millions of burning entities igniting in the void. They are fully formed, intelligent, and immediate. They do not evolve. They open their eyes in the dark, and their first sight is the Spirit of God moving on the waters. This aligns seamlessly with the canonical poetry. Go to Psalm 104, verse 4. Who maketh his angels spirits, his ministers a flaming fire, beings of wind and flame, created on Sunday. And Jubilees does not just say angels, it catalogues them. It lists the exact hierarchy born on that first day. The angels of the presence, the angels of sanctification, the angels of the spirit of fire, the angels of the spirit of the winds, the angels of the clouds, and of darkness, and of snow, and of hail, an entire ecosystem of unseen administrators locked into place before the physical earth even had dry ground. Sit with that. We often picture angels standing outside of time, watching God build the universe from some eternal balcony. But this ancient Ethiopian preservation places them inside the week, firstborn of the clock. They watch the light tear through the dark on day 1. They watch the firmament split the waters on day 2. They watch the dirt rise, the trees sprout, the stars ignite, and the creeping things crawl. And finally, they watched God breathe into the dust on day 6. This is one reading, not the final word. But watch what this timeline does to the 7th day. Look back at the King James text, Genesis 2, verse 1. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them, the host is complete. The armies are fully staffed. The millions of spirits of fire and wind are watching the dirt of Eden settle. God stops. The 7th day begins, but he does not invite the entire flaming army into his rest. He draws a terrifying, exclusionary line right through the middle of the angelic host. Millions of angels were created in the dark of day 1, but only a fraction were allowed into the rhythm of the Sabbath. What made the 2 orders so devastatingly holy that God shut the rest of heaven out of the 7th day? Look at the architecture of the unseen realm. In the ancient Jewish framework, heaven is not a flat, democratic circle of spirits floating on clouds. It is a terrifying, rigidly structured mountain of authority. At the lower tiers, you have the elemental forces, the watchers, the messengers, the millions of entities managing the gears of the physical cosmos. But at the absolute summit, breathing the very smoke of the throne, are the 2 orders. Listen to Isaiah 63, verse 9 inches, the King James. In all their affliction he was afflicted, and the angel of his presence saved them. In his love and in his pity he redeemed them, and he bare them, and carried them all the days of old. Stop right there. The angel of his presence, in Hebrew, malach hapanim, literally, the angel of the face. These are not foot soldiers sent to the outer provinces of creation. These are the inner circle. Picture it. Fast forward to the New Testament, Luke chapter 1, verse 19. An angel materializes in the earthly temple, standing next to the altar of incense. When the priest Zacharias doubts him, The entity does not just give his name. He gives his rank. I am Gabriel, that stand in the presence of God. He is identifying himself as one of the elite, an angel of the presence, and beside them are the angels of sanctification, the burning ones, the seraphim we see later in Isaiah 6, whose entire existence is locked in a cyclical, violent declaration of holy, 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 a sound so heavy the doorposts of the temple physically shake. I hold this as their telling, not as proven doctrine, but the Book of Jubilees insists that these two specific orders are fundamentally different from the rest of the host. The lower angels are laborers. They govern the physical elements. Jubilees catalogues the angels of the wind, the angels of the clouds, of cold, of heat, of winter, and of the deep. They run the machinery of the newly spoken earth. And machinery does not stop. When the seventh day arrives in Genesis 2, the dirt is finished. The stars are hung, but the wind still blows. The rivers still run. The lower angelic administrators are still actively holding the fabric of the physical world together. They are not invited into the pause. Sit with that. Only the angels of the presence and the angels of sanctification are called into the Sabbath rhythm. Why? Because they do not govern the physical world. Their only jurisdiction is the face of God. Proximity, not power. The Sabbath, in this ancient Ethiopian preservation, is not merely the cessation of hauling dirt. It is unmediated, focused communion. It is stepping into the absolute center of the divine council. The elementals stay at their posts. But the top two tiers of heaven enter a synchronized, burning pause with the Creator. Same creation week. Two completely different realms of existence. Two orders of fire, locked in a seventh-day liturgy, while a newly breathing Adam walks around the garden below, completely unaware of the thundering worship happening just beyond the veil. But a spirit of pure wind and flame does not need physical sleep, and a heavenly pause requires a radically different kind of cessation. If they were not resting from physical exhaustion, what exact terrifying act of worship did the first seventh day demand of them? Sunset on day 6. The first shadows fall across the dirt of Eden. Adam is breathing, blinking at the newly hung stars. His body is heavy with the newness of gravity and bone. He lies down, he sleeps, but overhead, the veil of the physical world is vibrating. A completely different reality is unfolding just beyond the visible sky. Genesis 2, verse 2 inches, the King James. And on the seventh day, God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. Stop right there. Look closely at the Hebrew word for rested, Sabbath. It does not mean to take a nap. It does not imply physical exhaustion. It means to sever, to cut off, to bring to an end. God did not lie down in the dirt of the garden. He severed the act of making from the act of being. And in that exact cosmic moment of severance, the two orders stepped into the breach. We have spent centuries building human theology around taking a day off from physical labor. But turn back to the Book of Jubilees, to the second chapter, and watch who is actually speaking. The text is written from the first-person perspective of an angel of the presence. He is dictating the hidden history of the world. Listen to his claim in Jubilees 2:18. And he gave us a great sign, the Sabbath day, that we should work 6 days, but keep Sabbath on the seventh day from all work. Read that again. Us. God gave the Sabbath to us. An ancient Jewish tradition openly declares that the very first commandment of rest was handed directly to spirits of fire. But fire does not get tired. Wind does not accumulate lactic acid. The angels do not possess physical bodies that require sleep. So what does an angelic Sabbath look like? If they are not resting from physical exhaustion, what is this rhythm? It is an unbroken cycle of violent, heavy blessing. The Sabbath of the two orders is not a day of silence. It is a deafening synchronization of will. I hold this as their telling, not as proven doctrine. But watch what this ancient framework does to the throne room. When God severed his work, the angels of the presence and the angels of sanctification stopped observing the physical universe. They turned their burning faces entirely toward the Creator. It is the unceasing, terrifying worship we see echoed later in Isaiah chapter 6, verse 3. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. This is the angelic rest. Total, absolute alignment. A focused communion so heavy it shakes the architecture of heaven. The seventh day was an invitation into the innermost ring of the divine council. The two orders ceased all other functions to step into the severed space with God, but they were the only ones. Picture it. Millions of other angels, the elementals, the watchers, the spirits of the clouds and the deep, are actively holding the machinery of the physical earth together. The wind must blow. The rivers must run. The stars must rotate. The lower angels cannot stop working, because the physical world does not stop spinning. A line was drawn in the heavens. The absolute highest rhythm of God was reserved for the elite, while the rest of the host remained at their posts, in the dark. Two realms of angels, separated by a burning liturgy. But what happens to a divided host when a cosmic boundary is drawn right through the middle of their ranks, leaving millions of watchers completely locked out of the rest of God? The firmament does not sleep. The oceans do not stop pulling against the sand. Nehemiah chapter 9, verse 6 inches, the King James. Thou, even thou art Lord alone. Thou hast made heaven, the heaven of heavens, with all their host, the earth, and all things that are therein, the seas, and all that is therein, and thou preservest them all, and the host of heaven worshipeth thee. Stop right there. Look at that word, preservest. The physical universe is not a clock wound up and left to tick on its own. It requires immense, unseen administration. The host of heaven is not sitting idle on clouds. They are holding the fabric together. Jubilees chapter 2 catalogues the exact forces required to keep the earth breathing. The angels of the wind, the angels of the clouds, the angels of cold and heat, of winter and spring. These are the lower tiers, the elemental managers, and because the earth does not pause on the seventh day, neither do they. Picture it, a divided heaven. On one side of the veil, the immense, grinding machinery of creation. Millions of spirits holding the weather, guarding the borders of nations, delivering messages. The Book of Daniel calls them watchers, beings whose eyes never close. They do not get a seventh day. Sit with that. Rest is not a universal right in the heavenly realm. It is a staggering, exclusive privilege. Listen to the exact phrasing of the angel speaking in Jubilees 2. And all the angels of the presence, and all the angels of sanctification. These two great classes, he hath bidden us to keep the Sabbath with him in heaven and on earth. These two great classes, and no one else. The line is drawn hard. The watchers watch. The messengers run. The elementals govern the storm. But the two orders step out of the machinery entirely. They enter a space where time essentially collapses into a single, burning point of communion. This is a devastating reversal of how we view the Sabbath. We think of a day off as a concession to our physical weakness, a break for the tired. But in this ancient Ethiopian preservation, the Sabbath is the exact opposite. It is the absolute peak of divine strength. It is the throne room rhythm. To be invited into it is to be elevated above the elementals, above the watchers, above the gears of the cosmos. I offer this as that, one tradition's record. But it forces us to look at the earthly narrative with new eyes. Because for 2,000 years after Eden, humanity mimics the lower angels. The humans are caught in the machinery. From Genesis 3 onward, mankind is cursed to the sweat of the brow. Thorns and thistles. Adam works the ground. Cain builds a city. Noah hauls timber for an ark. The patriarchs dig wells, pitch tents, and fight wars. You read the lives of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You see altars built. You see sacrifices made. You see covenants cut in blood. But you never see a Sabbath. Not once. Same God, same patriarchs, but no seventh-day rest. The humans are laborers, grinding out survival in the dirt. Heaven is burning with a seventh-day liturgy, but the earth is entirely deaf to it. The rhythm remains hidden at the absolute summit of the divine council, kept only by the fire and the wind at the face of God. Until suddenly, in the middle of a barren desert, the Creator decides to pull a nation of slaves out of the mud and hand them the liturgy of the seraphim. How does a cosmic rhythm, meant exclusively for the highest ranks of angelic fire, suddenly get commanded upon wandering men who just learned how to drop their chains? The granite base of Mount Sinai. The air is heavy, smelling of ozone and smoke. A mass of escaped slaves stands terrified in the dirt, staring up at a peak wrapped in fire and thick cloud. For 400 years in Egypt, their entire existence was measured by brick quotas. No days off, no rhythm, just the brutal, unbroken machinery of Pharaoh's empire. They are laborers of the dust, thoroughly crushed by the physical world. Moses walks down the mountain. He carries the blueprints for a tabernacle, instructions for an altar, and a rhythm that is about to violently alter human history. Listen to the King James, Exodus 31, verses 16 and 17. Wherefore the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, to observe the Sabbath throughout their generations, for a perpetual covenant. It is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, and on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed. Stop right there. Look at that word. Sign. In Hebrew, oth. A distinguishing mark. A monument. We read this verse and assume God is giving these exhausted slaves a much-needed physical break. But turn back to the angels speaking in the Book of Jubilees, and the scene at Sinai shifts from a labor law into a staggering cosmic promotion. God did not invent the Sabbath in the desert. He finally tore the veil open and shared it. Listen to Jubilees chapter 2, verses 19 and 20. And he gave us a great sign, the Sabbath day. And he said unto us, Behold, I will separate unto myself a people from among all the peoples, and these shall keep the Sabbath day. And I will sanctify them unto myself as my people, and will bless them. As I have sanctified the Sabbath day, and do sanctify it unto myself, even so will I bless them, and they shall be my people, and I will be their God. Read that again. Us, the angel, is speaking. God tells the highest ranks of heaven, the spirits of fire, who have kept the seventh-day rhythm since Eden, that he is finally bringing a human element into the inner circle. He is separating one specific people from the dirt of the earth and inviting them to keep the Sabbath with the angels. Picture it. The elemental angels are still turning the gears of the weather. The watchers are still walking the borders of the earth. The pagan nations are still building their empires, grinding away 7 days a week. The machinery of the cosmos has not stopped. But at the base of a smoking mountain, God looks at a crowd of mud-stained, traumatized brickmakers and hands them the liturgy of the seraphim. He commands them to stop, to sever their work, to step out of the machinery of survival for 24 hours. This is the terrestrial shift, the line of exclusivity that was once drawn strictly through the heavenly host is now being drawn in the sand of the Sinai Peninsula. By keeping the Sabbath, Israel was not just resting their bodies, they were stepping into the exact, unmediated communion of the two orders. They were mimicking the angels of the presence. Same creation week, same rest, two realms. I offer it as that, one tradition's record. But it elevates Exodus 31 from a simple list of ancient laws into a terrifying alignment. When an Israelite stopped picking up manna on the seventh day, he was joining a burning, unbroken choir that predated the dirt he was standing on. A nation of wandering brickmakers has just been handed the most elite, exclusive liturgy of the heavenly host. But commanding a man of dust to mimic a spirit of flame requires a violent collision of two completely different realities. How did the ancient Israelites actually synchronize their physical clocks with an unseen, burning choir? Friday afternoon in the wilderness of Sin, 2 million escaped slaves watched the sun drop behind the red crags of the desert. The cooking fires burn down. The sound of grinding millstones stops. The double portion of manna is already gathered in the jars. The entire camp goes completely silent. For the first time in human history, an entire nation simply ceases to produce. But look beyond the physical quiet. Look at what is actually happening in the unseen realm. The Israelites are not just resting their muscles, they are synchronizing their clocks. Listen to Exodus 31, verse 13 inches, the King James. Speak thou also unto the children of Israel, saying, Verily my Sabbaths ye shall keep, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that ye may know that I am the Lord that doth sanctify you. Stop right there. Look at that word, sanctify. In Hebrew, kadash. It means to be set apart, cut off, made completely separate. We usually assume this means Israel was set apart from the pagan nations around them, the Egyptians, the Canaanites. But the Book of Jubilees pushes this separation into the stratosphere. Israel is not just being separated from other humans, they are being separated from the lower angelic orders. Listen to the angel of the presence in Jubilees chapter 2, verse 21. Thus, he created therein a sign in accordance with which they should keep Sabbath with us on the seventh day, to eat and to drink, and to bless him who has created all things. Read that again. With us. The angelic speaker is explicitly stating that the earthly Sabbath was designed to be a simultaneous, overlapping event with the highest choir in heaven. God is taking a human nation, skipping over the elemental angels, bypassing the watchers of the wind and rain, and plugging men of dust directly into the highest frequency of the divine council. This is one reading, not the final word. But if you hold this ancient framework, the Sabbath becomes a mathematical alignment. The entire Book of Jubilees is fiercely obsessed with the calendar. It insists that earthly time must be kept perfectly. If the humans get the math wrong, if they observe the seventh day on the wrong cycle, they miss the synchronization. They fall out of phase with the heavens. They end up resting alone. But if they get the math right, the veil thins. Picture it. A Hebrew slave sits in his tent. He does not light a fire. He does not hold water. He does absolutely nothing productive. To the outside observer, it looks like a simple cessation of labor. But in that exact moment of absolute physical stillness, his spirit is locking into the exact rhythm of a burning seraph, standing inches from the face of God. Same rhythm, same rank. The humans are pulled out of the machinery of survival and invited to stand with the fire. For 24 hours, they are no longer laborers. They are priests of the cosmic order. The earthly tent and the heavenly throne room vibrate on the exact same frequency. The earthly Sabbath was never meant to be merely a day off. It was designed as a weekly translation into the unseen realm. But this level of holiness is violently difficult for the human mind to sustain. A massive spiritual synchronization requires a heart that understands exactly what it is connecting to. What happens to a nation of dust when they completely forget the angels, lose the unseen rhythm, and slowly grind this terrifying burning liturgy down into a lifeless list of physical rules? Go back to the seventh day of the world, a newly formed garden surrounded by the silent borders of Eden. Adam breathes in the dark. The dirt is settled. The rivers are flowing. You have read this scene 100 times. You have always imagined a quiet, solitary void where the Creator rests alone. But tonight, the void is gone. Look up through the firmament. The text has given you eyes to see the upper tiers of the mountain. The lower angels are grinding the gears of the weather. The watchers are holding the borders of the physical earth. But at the absolute summit, in the unmediated presence of the face, the two orders are burning with a liturgy that shakes the heavens, the angels of the presence, the angels of sanctification, millions of entities of pure fire and wind, severing themselves from the work of creation to lock into an unbroken rhythm of worship. This is one reading, not the final word. But if you hold this ancient Ethiopian preservation alongside the Genesis account, it violently alters everything you thought you knew about a day off. When God hands this rhythm down to Moses at Sinai, he is not just giving slaves a chance to rest their bones. He is opening a door in the sky. He is taking the most elite, exclusive privilege in the unseen realm and commanding men of dust to step into it. Exodus 31, verse 17 inches, the King James. It is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, and on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed. Read that again, refreshed. In Hebrew, naphesh, to take breath. The breath of God, exhaled on the seventh day, inhaled by the spirits of fire, and finally breathed into the lungs of exhausted men. You are no longer watching an ancient labor law. You are watching a staggering cosmic promotion. A brickmaker from the mud of Egypt is suddenly standing in the exact functional position of Gabriel. For 24 hours, the human laborer drops his tools, ignores the machinery of survival, and synchronizes his physical clock with the seraphim. Same creation week, same rest. But the mystery is not entirely solved. Jubilees gives us the math. It gives us the participants. But it also warns that this earthly synchronization is intensely fragile. If the calendar drifts, the connection breaks. And there is a deeper whisper buried in the ancient texts, a suggestion that this weekly alignment is only a rehearsal, a shadow of a final cosmic week, where the entire earth will eventually step into an unbroken, eternal seventh day. How that final translation happens, and what it will do to the lower orders of heaven who are still running the machinery, the text keeps that heavily veiled. The desert is still holding the rest. We have spent centuries treating the Sabbath as a nap, a retreat from the physical world. But the ancient text demands we see it as an offensive strike, a jarring translation into the very throne room of God. If you stayed with me until the end, comment the word "watched" below and subscribe to this channel as we continue to rebuild the forgotten architecture of the ancient biblical texts. And send this video to exactly one person, someone who loves the deep mysteries of the Sabbath, but has never heard the terrifying, fiery origins of its first choir. Human rest is not a cessation of labor. It is a sudden, violent collision with the highest reality of all.